to Market on Close. I'm Marley Caden. It's time now to wrap up this week's crypto action and welcome in Les Borsai, the co-founder of Wave Digital Assets. Now, Les, what a time to have you on. In our break, I was just watching our president hold the signing ceremony for the Genius Act. But before we get to that, I want to talk first about Bitcoin. We saw that new all-time high on Monday. We've had crypto week. What are your overall thoughts on the week as a whole?
There's a lot of energy in the space right now. I happen to be in Washington, D.C. over the last couple of days, and the excitement is palpable, even though they have had a couple of stumbling blocks to get here. So yeah, he signed it today, and it's incredibly exciting. And I think as soon as we see more institutional adoption, everything's going to be headed in the right direction with this asset class.
And what do you think the Genius Act means for the cryptocurrency sector?
I mean, I think it means a lot, not just from messaging, but it means a lot for the dollar. If you know about stable coins, they're pegged to a dollar or a treasury. So there is a reserve that is connected to them. But it's also good for, stable coins are good for cross-border payments. They're very fast settlements, and it's really taking technology and financial instruments and updating them. And the more they're used globally, the better it is for the dollar.
And with these new regulations that we're starting to see come into place and the other bills going to the Senate now for passage, do you think that we're going to see more at the state level happening in terms of adoption of crypto?
It's funny you should say that. I'm sitting in New Hampshire right now with, which is an incredibly innovative state. They're the first one in the country to adopt legislation for a digital reserve and, using these assets for kind of good purposes. So yes, I think the states are coming next. I think there's going to be a race to new innovative products. The president also announced crypto, as a class that you can take exposure in for retirement plans yesterday. That was a really big piece of news. So I think it's going to happen simultaneously at the state level as well as the federal level.
So outside of the state and federal level, do you think that other countries will start to follow suit now that the U.S. is passing regulation and legislation involving crypto assets? Are we going to see this become even more globally adopted?
Yeah, well, I would reverse that just a little bit. The other countries were a little bit ahead of us when Gensler and the past administration were in office, and a lot of innovation left the country. So we saw regulation, in the way of MiCA in Europe and other countries really accelerating. But once this president opened up the United States for business, everything came back. And I think, we are the leader in the space and will continue to be because it's being embraced. And really, as the institutional companies come in like BlackRock and, Fidelity, we're really going to see the asset class explode.
And with those inflows, we're constantly talking about BlackRock's. Do you think with the regulation and seeing more regulation in the crypto space, we're going to see an uptick in that institutional capital deployment?
Yeah, I think we're going to see two things. It's not just that we're going to see an uptick in the deployment, but we're going to see an uptick in the product offerings. If we look at traditional financial products, there are so many variations. And I think one of the big things we're going to see is the debt market open up, which hasn't happened. We've seen a lot with MicroStrategies and equities, and they're preferred. But I think, again, with regulation that these institutionals are going to be able to follow, we're going to see it at every level, and it's going to be product suites that really embrace this asset.
And with this passage of the legislation, do you think that it brings crypto one step closer to becoming a mainstream asset class? And I'll add a follow-up to that. Or do you think it already is a mainstream asset class?
I mean, I'd like to say I think it already is, but I don't think we're quite there yet. I think, when we take a look at a lot of these digital reserves, it's great to hold an asset, but we need to start figuring out ways to create liquidity around these reserves so these assets can generate revenues for good purposes. And I think the narrative has finally changed. For a long time, we heard a narrative that these assets were bad. So I still think we have a ways to go, but it is an asset that has global adoption, and that's what's going to make it really incredibly special.
And the markets responded really well to this week, to crypto week itself. We saw Bitcoin hit its all-time high. We saw the valuation of all cryptocurrencies top $4 trillion today before pulling back just slightly. Bitcoin and Ethereum accounting for 70% of that total market value. Do you think that investor demand and uptick we're seeing is going to continue? And if so, what will be the driver behind it?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of drivers behind it. I think there's always been a little bit of confusion with this asset class, and the more it's out there, the more this administration talks about it, the more people learn about it. So look, you have this element of FOMO of people who didn't get in early, but we're really just at the beginning. And I think, between the education that's out there, and the ability to actually take positions now, and not think it's some sort of scam product, and that's the significance of, for instance, retirement plans, they're government-based retirement plans, investing in the asset class. It'll create trust. I mean, trust is the big word here with the consumer. And I think the more products we see that consumers trust, the more they learn about it and will continue to adopt.
And I'd love to get your thoughts, Les. We had a guest on the show on Tuesday who said that by the end of the year, he thought that Bitcoin would be worth $500,000. What do you think about that?
I mean, it very well could be just based on, the scarcity of the asset. 2140, we're not going to see any more of these. There's 21 million. At the rate it's going now, I think it's been increasing at 100%, if not more a year. It very well could hit that number just based on the momentum. And, again, when we open up other financial markets and this is a trusted asset class, I think you're going to see the number go.
And Les, I have one last question for you. I read a letter that the Independent Community Bankers Association sent to the government today with some concerns that they had that the Clarity Bill could potentially open the door for crypto firms to own banks through holding companies and create a new generation of too big to fail institutions. Do you have any concerns there?
I don't have concerns there, but I mean, it is an obvious thing that I think the existing incumbent banking industry might say. When you have an asset that has lower fees and, is peer-to-peer and is 24 hours in terms of settlement and trading, if I was a bank, I'd be a little bit concerned.
Well, Les, we appreciate it. Thank you so much for the insight. Certainly an exciting week to be in crypto. That's Les Borsai from Wave Digital Assets.